Hello and welcome back to Why This Film, the podcast where we pick a movie from your childhood and have a chat about it. I'm Emily Slade and welcome back. You watched it so many times before and now you're gonna watch it again. But it's been so many years since you last saw it and now you show it to your friends and they're like, what?
What am I watching?
Why this film? And I'm joined today by Elizabeth. Hello.
Hi.
And her chosen movie is The Dark Crystal. The IMDb breakdown is: on another planet in the distant past, a gelfling embarks on a quest to find the missing shard of a magical crystal and so to restore order to the world. What's your relationship with this movie?
Well, obviously it was before my time. But actually my brother Lloyd, he got me into that because he's very much into fantasy.
Yeah.
So I remember it, I guess it was quite a vague memory of this odd, bizarre world in this film.
Yeah.
And he used to tease me, I remember it so vivid, because he used to tease me, he used to call me a gelfling, because I was an odd little child. Big blue eyes and blonde.
Yeah.
So he used to tease me about it.
Oh my god.
So there's sections that I have memories of.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until going back and being
That's
having that moment and those characters. It's such vivid image, isn't it? The whole
That's
film.
such a cute little nickname. I don't think I would worry. Please, someone start calling me gelfling. It's adorable.
Yeah.
So cute.
Yeah.
So did you have it on video? Was it taped off the TV?
I think it was video.
Yeah.
So he must have, got it
just had
for,
it, yeah.
for him or something like that.
Yeah.
So
And then got you
he
into
knows
it.
far more about it. But yeah. Because he's very much into all of that.
So are you not usually? Are you not usually a fantasy fan?
I am, but I think because of him, fantasy,
Right. Yeah.
that sort of relationship, I think it's because of him.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's really
whereas,
sweet.
my other brothers, they tend to they're all about football or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
But
yeah.
Lloyd, he's an author and he writes fantasy stuff.
Wow.
So yeah,
Oh, that's really cool.
so that's it. So a bit
Amazing.
quirky.
Yeah.
He's the quirky one in the family.
The cool one by the sounds of it,
yeah.
I'm not even gonna lie. Yeah, I sort of cheated on this one. I came to it through I discovered Labyrinth,
Yes.
which was the other sort of Jim Henson at the time. And then when I was sort of doing my research about Labyrinth, because I had lots of friends, as you could probably tell, I came across Dark Crystal, and it was always
Yeah.
if you like Labyrinth, you'll like Dark Crystal. So I immediately went out and bought it on DVD. I would have been about 14 by this
okay.
point. And then I would start watching it alongside Labyrinth. I'd do double bills again because I have lots of spare time.
But there's just something that's so authentic in these films.
Yeah, it fascinated me. It was because we obviously had the Muppet movies, and we had all things like The Neverending Story, and we had Labyrinth,
Yes,
which were
yeah.
humans interacting with the puppets.
Yeah.
This is possibly because I never watched anything like Fraggle Rock or Sesame Street, and even then this
no,
is
I
completely
hadn't.
different because it's entirely puppet. And when I tried to get people to watch it when I was younger, they found it a real struggle because there was no human counterpart.
Right. Okay.
And I did have to say, watching it this time through, because it is just the puppets, it can be quite slow and it can be
Yes.
quite sort of scenes can take quite a long time and they can be quite still.
Yeah.
However, everyone should watch this movie, just purely from a creative and
It's fantastic.
so
isn't it?
imaginative.
The craftsmanship. of
Yeah, every single scene has a little creature scurrying across the floor,
Yes.
and it's all puppets.
Yeah.
It's all really there,
The
and it's
amount of time
magic.
and detail that has
Yeah.
gone into creating the film, and obviously there's the new Netflix one that's
Yes.
come out.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, I started looking at the behind the scenes
Yeah.
footage of all that, and it's incredible, the techniques and the technology that's being implemented.
Literally, and it's gorgeous. I've only watched the first couple of episodes so far, but it's absolutely gorgeous.
It's creating a whole world, a whole
Yeah.
universe, and I think the early film feels so raw because I guess that then, it was quite a new thing. That sort of like fantasy had been around.
Yeah, it was having a sort of resurgence in the 80s, wasn't it, in that sort of filmic way, because the technology had slightly progressed enough that they were able to do a little bit more.
Yes.
So it was having a sort of renaissance. I've always loved it, and I will love it if it's like shitty and crap, or if it's like magnificent. And I actually prefer shitty crap fantasy to like... I will always say Gamork from the Neverending Story, the wolf, is much scarier than the Kraken from the 2010 Clash of the Titans.
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
Because he's there, and he's like dripping blood.
Yes.
The Kraken is a green screen. Like, fuck off, that's not scary.
There's something tangible, like, it's almost like, because these are puppets.
They're like
there.
practically there.
Yeah.
Like when, we'll get into the plot, but there's a moment where, so you've got the Skeksis and the Mystics are the two sort of creatures that have formed once the crystal crack. Oh god, the opening is so epic. like the music is so good, and it does that. Oh, the voiceover is sweet, and it does that thing that more movies need to start bringing back, where it's like the dark crystal, and then it like comes up with the title card, and the music's like bwom, bwom, and I'm like, yeah. It's
write
so
that
good.
film. Write a film like it.
Yeah, I'm going to. Every film I ever write is going to have the title, and then like it'll come up with like some dramatic music. It's so good, and like you learn all about these characters through this narrative exposition, which I really don't mind, because you really get a feel of the world, and it sort of introduces you in a way, because there's no, everyone's a weirdo. Do you know what I mean? There's no Luke Skywalker here.
Yes. Yeah.
So this narrator is our Luke Skywalker, to be like, hello, welcome to this creepy land. It's got 3 suns.
Yes.
Check it out. What the fuck is this guy? What's going on here? I don't know. Let's find out together.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
But I think also like the characters, there's something oddly with the story and the characters relatable, and also the individual characters, they're so whole.
Yes, they are.
They've all got their own personalities, like the Gelflings, every single one is entirely different.
They like look like actual... Like their facial expressions are so good, and it's fucking puppets, but the use of like just the eyeballs, like it opens with the Skeksis emperor is like dying, and his eye is like twitching, but it's a puppet, but it's like it's like in Muppet Christmas Carol when Kermit blows out a candle.
Right.
It's just that movie magic that you're like, what the fuck?
How did they do that?
Like I think that that's real now, because you've convinced me that like these things exist.
Yeah, because they've got glass eyes, haven't they?
Yeah.
But it's sort of you look into it, like you can emotion
see.
comes
Yes.
over.
Which is incredible. Like we've both studied drama. I don't know how much puppetry you've done. I did a bit at university, and
I've dabbled
really
a little bit.
Hated it.
Really?
Even though I love the Muppets and I love Jim Henson.
I love the idea
him.
of being able to do it. Obviously,
Yeah.
these are professionals, and I can only ever hope. But it's skill. It's
such a skill. Like you have to like look at the face, because then you're just like, especially these ones, they're like underneath or like around.
Yeah.
I didn't realise until the credits rolled that Jim Henson voices Jen. I didn't know that.
Right. Okay.
It's like, what?
Well, so you got the in the Netflix one. Is it Chamberlain?
Yes.
One of my favourite characters, because he's so... That's Simon Pegg.
It's, doing like an
Amazing.
impression of the like 80s one, but it's so good.
But that's what I think they've done so well. Because Dark Crystal became quite a cult film.
Yes, definitely.
So it's quite a challenge to then do like a remake of that. So they've done a very good job with the new Netflix original to kind of
get new
hone
audiences in.
new audiences, but keeping to the original context of the world. And actually Chamberlain, you put the two together, and same character. Obviously, you're learning new things about it, but it's very
I didn't
done.
realise it was going to have the same sort of characters. So when he showed up, I was like, oh my god, thank God, because he should be up there. I don't know if he is, but he should be on every top villains list ever. First of all, he's a Skeksis anyway, and they're terrifying to look at. They're like these sort of vulture-y. But more than that, I was going to say earlier, when he gets stripped of his clothing, he's like this sort of... He looks like he's got the plague. He's like this bulbousy, with like razors on his back.
Rotten. They're like
like rotten vultures.
Yeah.
They're horrible. And then this one, obviously, like
he's a bit snaky as well, which is like a reptile. Yeah, he's like a reptile. Oh, it's incredible.
It's so good.
But then once again, like the Gelfling, they're all individual characters.
Yeah.
They move in a different way. They obviously sound differently. They look differently.
Definitely.
The craftsmanship that's gone into
and yet
it.
they all still belong in this world as well.
Yeah.
Like none of them like are out of like tonally they're all like fitting into this environment, and the environment is so vast and so like magical, and there's so many different creatures all the time. Like it's just gorgeous.
Can I just say how terrifying it is though?
Oh my god, it's
Isn't
so
it like
scary.
Rewatching the original,
Yeah.
terrified. Like one of the, I think the leader of the Skeksis, he dies and he just decomposes on the
Yeah, he
bed.
like crumbles. He like crumbles into dust like Rasputin at the end of Anastasia. And then in comparison, the mystic that's like his counterpart like disappears into stardust, and I was like, that's much nicer. And then Jen has my favourite line where he's like, I don't want to do it alone. All right, alone. And you're like, that was an easy
The
decision.
story is also lovely, isn't it?
Oh, it is.
It's about being brave and then coming together as a community.
And it's
That's always
it's
nice.
that like hardcore. The 80s was so good for this. We don't really do it anymore since fucking Christopher Nolan got his hands on Batman, and everybody wants grey villains and grey heroes now. The 80s had the extreme good versus evil.
Yes,
And it's just sometimes you just need that. You just need the bad guy to be bad.
Yeah, clarity.
Yeah.
You know.
And there is no mistaking here who is good and who is bad. And he like denies his sort of call to adventure, and then he meets his like, and you've got all like the Oracle in Aughra, and you've got like all of these like tropey fantasy characters that come into this journey, and it is such an episodic-y kind of quest of a story, and it's just great, man.
Yeah.
They don't make them like that anymore.
I think even if you're not into fantasy, there's something to learn. But there's something you can connect to it.
Yeah.
You end up really enjoying and liking these characters.
Yeah.
And they're just perfect.
Even the villains, because the Chamberlain is so iconic.
Yeah.
You love to hate him.
Yeah.
He's like the Umbridge of these like creatures, because he's like, the others are just like, rah, I'm evil, and they like, trial by stone. And they, sorry, I love that.
That moment where like they take the swords, don't they, and they
Yeah.
start like whacking
Whacking
the
the
crystal.
stone. And they're like clearly just like evil. They're just like, I refuse to die. I'm gonna kill you. And then, but you're right. With the Chamberlain, he's more sort of manipulative and sneaky, and it's really frightening because he's like, he like bumps into the Gelflings a bunch of times, and he's like, Gelfling, come with me.
Oh, that moment.
And you're like, don't do it.
Don't do it.
It's so good though, because it's not just. It is still black and white, but it's like it's scarier than that.
I feel like he's sort of like this character, he merges the two. So you've got the good and the bad, but he's like the overlap a little bit, isn't he?
That he plays that
with
sort of
it.
exactly. Like he's cleverer than I think the other Skeksis give him credit for. But he's like humiliated in the first like 10 minutes of the movie.
Yes.
But he's still like he's got this ambition behind him that's driving him. That's frightening as well.
Yeah, because in some like, this might be controversial, but in some ways, I guess we kind of know people. That's a human trait.
This
there
is
are
the thing.
people
He's,
like that.
he's incredibly. He's, as I say, he's very Umbridge. He's very Biff Tannen. He's that just person that you know in real life, but in this movie.
Yeah.
Whereas the others are sort of like, I'm an evil emperor. He's like, oh no, you've met me and you hate me,
Yes.
and like you're frightened of me. I'm a threat. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
very good, and I think it really gives credit to this movie that could so easily have been a bit more like Legend 1984 with it, where it was literally like, I am the son of the devil and therefore
Right.
I am the villain, and then like the goodie was like a literal princess.
Right.
Still a great movie, but I won't have you coming for
Get
Legend.
someone else.
But and I love how we are sort of seeing things, because Jen's been sort of living with the mystics this whole time.
Yes.
He doesn't know shit. So like we are learning and discovering as much as he is.
Yeah, which is
clever.
lovely. Yeah, that's a really clever.
I love Kira. I love her
Yeah.
so much. And there's such good reveals. Like the one thing about, I won't talk about the new Netflix one too much, but in the opening episode, they really try and get across all the things that we know they can already do, and just to establish it to an audience. So they get it in like the first 10 minutes, however they can. Whereas in the movie, they wait to reveal these different things about these species, and they also use them to drive the plot. So like it's not until we're in peril and we're like, how are we going to get out of this, that Kira's suddenly like, oh, I've got wings. And you're like, what? And she's like, I got wings. And he's like, I don't have wings. Of course not. You're a boy.
Oh, I love it.
It's so good.
I wish I had wings.
I know, right? And like we would do if we were girlfriends, thank God, because we're female. Whoop, whoop.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's so cute. And then I love how she can like talk to all the animals and like she knows all the sort of plants. Like she's so wise in the world, and thank God, because Jen would be dead in 5 minutes.
Yeah, because they've come from like different places. She, I guess, is living how a gelfling would live.
Almost would, yeah. And also like a podling.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course. Yeah.
So she's got.
They're lovely characters as well, aren't they?
So cutely designed.
Yeah, they are.
They're like these podgy little like voles almost, like that sort of like gophery-ish.
No, it's sort of like wrinkles, like
like a walnut.
And they've got their own language, which is fascinating. It always fascinates me when like these fantasy stories and films have their own language. The amount of craft and time that goes into forming that.
Literally, it's like Tolkien. That's like somebody spent a long time coming up with that, and it's used like so briefly. And then they got the classic joke where Jen tries to say thank you, and he's clearly like swearing at all of them. It's so good. I love it so much. It's so. Like going back to what you were saying about the lessons, like it's because it's this sweeping fantasy and because it's Jim Henson, it has these lines in it that are just so gorgeous. When he meets, is it Algra? Is that how you pronounce her name?
I think so. Algra. That might sound right. Someone can correct us.
Yeah, correct us.
Comment if you will.
Like, subscribe, let us know. When he goes to visit her and he's like, oh, my master sent me, the leader of the mystics. And she's like, what, where is he? And he's like, oh, he's dead. And she goes, could be anywhere then. And you're like, oh, wow, that, like, it hits me every time, that line. I'm just like,
the script is great.
It's so nice.
I think it's everything that comes together. That's why it's so iconic. Like if the script wasn't so good, then obviously the visuals, but I don't think it would have been as iconic.
Yeah, it's so true. And it is
I think
so
everything's
cold.
come together.
Definitely. The story builds up in such a way, and it's fascinating. I always forget the ending. So I'm always really pleasantly surprised when it starts happening.
Yeah, what is the ending?
Because, like, I always forget that Kira dies.
Oh, yeah, of course,
Kira fucking dies.
Yeah, she does.
They just fucking kill her off.
Yeah.
It's fine, though.
It's fascinating. We won't go into the new one too much, but obviously that is quite, like, gruesome, and that can be quite scary. But the original, it makes you wonder what the audience was like.
Yeah,
as
like,
kids, are they more resilient or...
Yeah, it's such a good point, because I believe it's like a U or a PG, and it was clearly
I think it is PG. I think it's PG.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. It's quite scary images, I guess, is why. And then Jim Henson was clearly making all this shit for kids. So if they were like, the new Jim Henson movie with entirely puppets, it's aimed for children. But there still isn't anything really like it, even in the time it was coming out, and there's not really been anything like it since. This sort of entirely animatronic, puppeted, full-length feature movie that's the fantasy genre. Like, it's so unique.
It is.
So I think that's why it's become cult, because you either like respect and adore it, or you just can't get behind it. Yeah. So I would be really fascinated to know like the stats on the sort of cinema goers at the time.
Yeah.
Because like even the poster is like so intricate and detailed. It looks like a book. Like it looks like the cover of a book.
Yes, it does. Yeah,
it's
that's
like
a good
inked
point.
and like gorgeous with this sort of like Celtic design almost. And
I think why it also works, because going back to like the audience, I guess it's like a panto thing. It's for kids, but there's also an undercurrent. There's something for the adults as well.
Definitely.
And then because it is so detailed, I would say even adults can get behind it.
And I would say perhaps even more. I mean, I watched this first when I was 14 and I fell in love with it. I think if I were to try and watch it if I was like 8, especially as a 90s child, where what was coming out for me was the Renaissance Disney Studio, which is a whole different vibe. I wonder if this would capture my attention in the same way, because it's so detailed but still quite slow and not like anything you've seen before. I don't know if my like basic brain would have been able to like sit through it. Do you know what I mean? Even though it's quite short, it feels a lot longer because it takes its time to establish everything, and like there's not a human person in sight. So I'd really love to do an experiment now with like today's children and be like,
watch it. Is because that has moved. Like you look at theatre and you look at like even films and stuff. Like when there's like a 3-hour film in the cinema, everyone's like, I can't sit there for 3 hours.
Which that used to be the norm.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like theatre that's like an hour long. There's so much of that type of thing. So yeah, that's an interesting.
It's really interesting. I can't get over how completely unique it is. Like I can't think of anything else like it other than now the new Netflix series, which even already feels different. Like the tone is already slightly different from the movie. But
also like going back to that point of like the pace of it, that is even in this new one.
Yeah.
Like there were moments like it's puppets and each moment is kind of alive within the movement.
Considered.
That's a good word. So the pace is actually quite similar.
Yeah.
And then maybe there are points where it's kind of like, do you need that moment? Could we trim that?
Yeah.
But then possibly you would lose the nature of like the first film,
the momentum and stuff. Yeah, exactly. And I think they do use sort of CGI a little bit in the new one.
They do,
which is how they're able. There was like a flying sequence in one of the first episodes or something. Which
because
was
they tried it. They tried it with puppets and CGI gelflings. It's like, can you imagine that? But then they were like, no, it's all got to be puppets.
Got to be puppets.
So I don't think it would work if it wasn't puppets. That's what's unique about it.
I, for example, would be like, if I'd found out that it wasn't purely puppets, I would like boycott it.
Yeah.
Purely because I'm just like, why? Not good enough.
Because there's something incredible about they
magic.
Are alive. Yeah,
it's literally magic. This inanimate object has life and personality breathed into it by someone operating it with a stick, and then the voice. And even though you know it's still a puppet because its mouth can only move a certain way, again, it's like the Muppets themselves. Like Jim Henson just had a gift. Like he had a gift. And there are times when you're watching The Dark Crystal where you are completely in this world and you completely believe. And it was only this time round that I noticed in like quite long shots, I was suddenly like, oh, that's a human. That's a human in a costume, like climbing up the rocks
there were
and
moments
stuff.
like that, yes.
And this is the first time that I've like clocked that. And I was like, oh yeah, this is a movie.
And the scale as well, like the images, like that's so smartly done. There's so much like filming technique going on as well.
Yeah.
Because how big is a human? And you're going to put to make gelflings so small.
Gelflings are so small, and like this is the thing as well. All of the different creatures are like the Skeksis are so tall and overbearing, and the Gelfling are so small and nimble, and then the Podlings are like sort of like dumpy and fun. The Mystics are so slow moving.
Yeah. Which is humorous. There's a lot of humour as well. And once again, we can recognise that in actual life.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that's why it works.
100%. Every single species and character within those species has their own energy, and it all works in this world. Like we go from like the really slow Mystics to then like Aughra, who's like fucking freaking out everywhere. She's so like hard. She's got a heart of gold. Yeah. She's a sweetheart. She says that, I wrote it down. What did I say? Near the end, Kira's like going out and like she's gonna try and save Jen and save the crystal, and Aughra's trapped in this cage, and she's like, "Go, Gelfling, I fear to death." And not once does Kira turn around and be like, what? What was that? Sorry, what did you just say? Like she's just so prophetic. Everything she says all the time is just like, yes, we shall do this now and it will probably suck. And it's like, thank you for your optimism, Aughra.
Reality though.
Yeah.
She brings in like
exactly,
this
sort of sarky
wisdom, reality.
But also like, I love the way she talks. I love when she's talking about the like Great Conjunction, and she's like, ask me what the Great Conjunction is, and he's like, what's the Great Conjunction? And she's like, the end or the beginning. Could be either, but definitely change. And you're like, do you even know what you're fucking talking about?
Yeah.
But it's so interesting because you're like, what the fuck is the Great Conjunction, and like, how are we going to play into this?
I think it keeps you hooked, and the visuals of it.
Yeah.
Because is it the opening where we get introduced by that machine, and it's got the pattern on the floor?
Yes.
Is that the opening?
Yeah.
And that's just so stunning.
And the crystal like rises, and then like, and there's the noise when, because the Skeksis take life from the crystal by the crystal like shining into their eyes, and that's why
they reflect it off, don't they?
And it makes this sort of like noise as it's doing it, and meanwhile this narrator is like, the world of blah blah blah. Like, I can't remember what the planet's called. It's interesting that IMDb breakdown said that it was on another planet in the distant past. That's something I'd never even. I was always just like, it's the Dark Crystal. It's just like, you know.
It's like. Yeah, I guess you would just be, it just takes over our world. Yeah. Like, our world wouldn't exist. Yeah. But it's quite nice that, like, maybe this is going on elsewhere.
Literally, like, right now, Gelflings are around.
Yeah.
So
fighting off all these baddies.
They're such a gorgeous little race. They're sort of elven and, like, again, like, even though you can see that things are inspired by other things, like, the Mystics almost look lizardy in a way.
Yeah, because they've got their really long
sort of tail.
They've got 4
but they're not
arms.
threatening, because lizards suck. Not lizards, but like Komodo dragons suck.
You sound like a person who's been like chased by a Komodo dragon.
Me and Komodo dragons, we go way back. I got my personal beef with them.
We've all been there. It's like,
horrible, I hate them. But these are like non-threatening Komodo dragons. And then the Skeksis are vultures, and the Gelflings are sort of like humanoid, but like not.
Yeah, I don't know what you would, because they're not quite they're not nice.
Yeah,
they're not like that bear-like.
They've got that sort of. It's like Arthur.
I feel like I want to get a picture up.
And I'll obviously post loads of pictures. But everything, and there's like creatures everywhere. There's the one she calls from the swamp, which is clearly based on like a frog, but it looks more like the frog from Pan's Labyrinth, but also not at all. It's like clearly its own thing as well.
Oh, what are they called? The little fluffy doggy things.
Oh, the Fizzgig.
Yeah, Fizzgig. Oh, they're brilliant.
He's so good.
Because they're so loyal, but they're also really aggressive.
So aggressive. So yeah, it's like a little Jack Russell, but like it's not. It's just like a ball of fur with eyeballs stuck on it, and like, and it's that classic puppet where you know it's somebody's hand because its mouth opens up in that way. When she's like, Fizzgig, you stay here. You can't come with us, and then he just like fucking screams. Just shrieks for like 5 solid minutes.
Puts me off from having kids. That's what it's like.
Oh mate, I've never wanted kids. I want a Fizzgig though. I'd rather have a Fizzgig than kids.
They're fluffy, aren't they?
And they ride these like land striders at one point, and
they're
really bizarre. Like,
they don't look comfortable.
I don't know what they're like the Dali elephants, but not at all that. Do you know what I mean?
Dali elephants.
You know Salvador Dali drew those elephants with the really long legs.
Oh yes,
Like it's that, but like it's not at all, because then they've got like whiskers. They've got a face like
really aged face.
Yeah, they're so I can't even tell you what kind of animal on this planet they look like, because they are pure imagination.
Yeah,
like
really unique.
And everything. We're panning past like a swamp, and a little fuzzy creature pops its head out of the reeds and then like scuttles back in again. And I was like, what the fuck was that? I don't know. It looked like a bat meets a vole. But
that's
like,
where the detail, like there's like, even when they're not main characters, the creatures that they created.
This world is alive. Like it's lived in.
Constant. One shot, there'd be plants moving and then things scurrying along, and it's just like the amount of detail.
And even Jen, like he's standing on these rocks, and these sort of anemone-looking things just suddenly like scoop up and like roll away, and he was like, that was weird. And we're like,
that terrifying moment of that pit of like, what are they? There's like weird like ball. They eat you, they consume you.
Oh yeah, they're like, God, what are they?
I don't know what they're called.
No.
Oh no, that's not something I put down. What are they called? What would you even Google for that?
Oh, exactly. Dark crystal monster thing.
But they were the idea. It reminds me of the Mummy and the
scarab
beetles. They terrified me for like
Yeah.
ages. I couldn't sleep because of them. So I had the same reaction from this.
Yeah. They're like, and there's like the big like beetly guards with the like lobster claws.
Yes. And they just destroy everything.
Just like fuck you up, and then they too like just collapse into pieces at the end, which is so satisfying. So many different things. Just everywhere all the time. They go into the sort of cavern in the Skeksis castle, and there's like my brain is implying that it's like a spider, but it's not a spider. Like there's just little things like scuttling across the floor. Again, just balls of fluff with legs. But like it's more than that. You know that they're like a thing.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah.
I'm like I just really noticed how much was going on in every shot this time around. Like it's so magical.
It's like I want to just keep going, like watching it again, because I feel like you're gonna find something new.
I always find something new.
I might actually, if we watch it again at some point, and then have a look at the list of people they would involve, because obviously big films always involve lots of people. But I feel like the creatives that are going to be on that list.
Yeah, they'll have like I mean, there's lots of books around the Dark Crystal as well.
Yeah.
Like a lot of Jim Henson creations ended up in like sort of books and stuff, which is so gorgeous.
I think there's a set of books that have kind of like in the modern one they've taken the story from a lot of like the kind of the books.
Cool.
So that's what they've done, I think.
That's cool.
Yeah.
My problem with the Netflix one as well is it's like a prequel.
It's entirely.
And like I know that entire culture is going to have genocide committed to it, so it's like I don't want to get to know all these characters just to then watch them all die out. Like,
but I wonder if people will go back and watch. Like new audiences.
Yeah.
I wonder if they're going to watch the Netflix one, get into it, and then go back, or would it still be like a bit disconnected?
Yeah. I know what you mean.
It'd be nice if it got people watching the original.
Definitely. And I'm so happy it's still on Netflix, and like I'm pretty sure it will be for a while now because they've got the new one. It's like ha 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 ha. Whereas they've taken Labyrinth off, they've taken so many stuff off.
Also, can I just say I'm super jealous that a human being can have the creativity and the mind to create such a world. Like I wouldn't even know where to start.
An entire world, visually and emotionally and narratively, like it's all come together, and they knew where it was going to go as well. Like at the beginning, the castle's all dark and like cobwebby, and then by the end, it was like a crystal palace, and like, Netflix did that thing, it was so annoying, like it ended and it's got like over the credits this landscape of what the world is like now that they've restored the crystal, and then Netflix like minimized it and started playing the trailer for the like new series, and I was like, stop!
Yeah, because there's 10 out, isn't it? The Netflix is 10.
Yeah.
And I finished watching it, I was like, where's the next one? It kind of ended a bit oddly.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that's what I thought anyway.
Right. I imagine it's probably because they were like, ha 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 ha, we're gonna bring out more.
Hook you in.
But like, they must have spent so much money because the puppetry would have been so expensive, and then on top of that, they've gotten the names that they've got alongside it.
Yeah, definitely.
It must have cost a lot of money.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is crazy.
I bet that was an interesting process. Voicing it. You've got the visuals, and then when you're on acting, you come in and you're voicing it.
And like, it's not like animation where you can't sort of match the voice to the mouth in the same way, because the puppet mouth doesn't move like a human mouth.
Yeah, because this is also like, I think as a when you're working the puppets, you're acting. Obviously, no one sees it.
Yeah.
Unless you're in the room, but they're acting along with it.
Yeah.
And it seems to be that they set the pace of it. They work with the director, obviously, but they set the pace of it. So then when you're voicing it in the booth as an actor, you're not boxed in, but I guess you've got these guidelines. And the timings, it's like
dubbing. It's a bit more like
exactly.
restricted.
Yeah.
So you've got to get across all this emotion, but making sure that it fits in with what's already been laid down. It's so interesting. Just got a note here that's Camellia, which is like calling all the animals. And this is the thing, like, the languages. Just everyone has a different language. My notes are so stupid. Little baby gelfling, please wait. Why isn't Kira the prophecy one? She knows all the shit. Just because Jen's like, I've got to go save the world. And Kira's like, okay, well, I can help you because I know literally everything about this universe. And I can talk to every single animal and I know all the uses of the plants. What can you do? And he's like, she's like, I can also fly. And he's like, I've got the crystal shard. She's like, well, I guess you're in charge then.
But why do you think that's like a product of the time? Or do you think they've done it on purpose because then he's like an ordinary lad?
Oh yeah. He is. I know I said there wasn't a Luke Skywalker, but he is because he's been so. He's guiding us through this world, and it's just annoying from a contemporary point of view that I'm like, that girl knows fucking everything. Put her in charge.
Yeah, but because quite frankly, he wouldn't get.
No, he wouldn't get
anywhere.
He would die without her.
He would be dead in the first 10 minutes.
Literally.
Yeah.
The amount of times that she saves his life. Like, he leaves and within 5 minutes he's like falling in a pond and he's like sinking. Dream fasting.
Oh, isn't that beautiful?
So nice.
Yeah.
And I find it so dumb in the new one. Like, it's these two, the last remaining people of this species meet for the first time and they're shocked that there's another one of them out there, and they take hands to try and rescue each other from this swamp, and suddenly they start like dream fasting, and it's like, oh, what's going on? And it's also exposition where we find out about their upbringings and things, and it's so good and it's so well thought out and it's so necessary and it's so magical. And the prequel, these two characters are just like, should we dream fast? Yeah. Let's dream fast about how we met. Yeah, alright then. And then they just like
Takes the
do
magic
it.
out
And I
of
was
it.
like, oh,
How
rubbish.
brilliant would it be to be able to dream fast?
Oh my god, so good.
How many problems would be solved?
You would never doubt your memories again.
No.
Because you would be able, it's like that Black Mirror episode where you can just always constantly check
I know what you mean,
what happened. But I would just want the good memories, because otherwise I would, knowing myself, I would go back on all the bad memories.
Of
like,
course,
constantly.
that's such a human thing to do, right? We dwell on the
Can
world.
gelflings do it with other species or just other gelflings?
That's a good question. I feel like it is just between gelflings. Because I guess you both have to have the ability for it to be like, because I feel like the gelflings, they're very much about togetherness.
Yeah, like
They
the
work
community
together.
and clans.
So you'd have to have a pair, I think.
Yeah. It's cool though. It's so cool. And then of course near the very end, well at the end, they repair the crystal and the mystics and the Skeksis come together to form those like tree people. I never
because that's their original form.
Yeah, because they were like split.
Yeah, I love their backstory as well.
It's so magical.
Because it is the good and bad, going back to that point.
And then they become that neutral, godlike point where they're like, we are both evil and good, but we just guard the crystal like...
And they're bizarre. That's another bizarre image.
Yeah. Because they're sort of Ghost of Christmas Past meets. They're sort of see-through, but they're clearly still puppets. But they've had like something done to them where they're like they're pure light as well. But they're like trees. Their design is so cool.
They remind me of something. Is there something in Lord of the Rings?
There's Ents, which are like the tree people. But these are like Ents in like really long dresses that are floating off the ground. And then their hands are really... And then they do that thing that I love, where it's like they talk without their mouth moving. And whenever that happens, I'm like a magic person.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because... what's his name? The main guy?
Jen.
There are nice moments because you've got the main narration, but he also has like this sort of like inner thought thing,
like
going
a JD
on.
monologue from Scrubs, like where his mouth doesn't move and he just thinks, and he's like, "Oh, master, why did you have to leave me?" And it makes sense because you wouldn't talk out loud to yourself; you would just think, and you can always tell he's thinking because it's sort of got a reverb on the voice.
Yeah.
It's like, "Master, why did I?" It's really funny.
But that's a nice little touch touch as well.
It's really, really cute.
It invites you in straight away.
Yeah, like we are 100% Jen, and we are following him through this weird world, meeting these hot girlflings that can fly. The wings are so nice. They're sort of like dragonfly wings that are like see-through and like kind of glittery, but not. It's an interesting one. This movie's not very 80s fantasy in that it's not just pure like glitter. It's a rough,
It's subtle and
old world where like things are rocky and forests are like overrun and like it's brimming with like, it feels like what I imagine England was in the beginning, where it's just pure like forest and mountain and like landscape, like the world of Avatar as well, before Korra gets in with all of its technology. Like it just, and I love that. I love that sort of mythological Arthurian time and way of landscaping a world where it's just natural. It's like all nature. Yeah. Because it's a threat in itself as well. Because it's like there's ponds everywhere that you can just fall into. There's mountains that like crumble and like rocks are falling all the time, and like nature is dangerous. It can also be wondrous and beautiful, but then also like there's vines that you can get trapped in and like stuff like that.
That's also something that we know as people. That's something that we understand.
Like it's genuinely threatening.
It is.
And like it is. You're right. Even though there's no human counterpart, this story is so human.
It is.
And like I think a lot of people miss that because they get so wrapped up in trying to be like, why am I watching a puppet? And
But
like,
that's the
not,
thing.
You're watching a girlfriend.
Because correction. But I tried, because rewatching it, I tried to get a couple family members to rewatch it, and they just couldn't sustain the attention.
Yeah.
And I think it's partly because we're spoiled so much.
So much. Like things are so fast paced now. We're not used to watching puppets in the same way. And I have to say, even I struggled in parts. Like when they're doing Trial by Stone, and it's so arduous where each Skeksis raises up his sword and hits the stone and nothing happens and everybody cheers and then it goes to the next one, and it's only like a minute of footage, but it feels a lot longer because you're watching these puppets, and we should be like, wow, like look at what we're watching happen, but instead we're like, oh, get on with it. And like I feel so bad
already.
Because then there's other moments where I'm like completely transfixed to the screen and I'm just like, yes, this is so good. Like when she like leaps off the cliff and her like cloak falls off and her wings come out. Kira, you can fly. It's so good.
I wonder, like as adults, I feel like I'm more like transfixed onto it now as adults, like as actors having trained also.
Yeah, definitely.
We understand maybe
what's
gone into
on,
it
and like how much time it would have taken. Like that's a real thing with films nowadays. When I watch, having now like done some screen acting now, I'm like, my god. Like I used to think that you do everything in like one take and move on. And now like 1 minute of footage can take an entire day. And then when you put puppets into that mix, where like it's like stop motion, where it just every single second you have to make sure everything's perfect and everything's good to go, and then you have to reset it and do it again, and like, and I think it does, knowing that adds to the watching the movie as well, because then you are like, okay, I respect this because I know what's gone into it.
And what's interesting is like puppetry, that's always been around.
Yeah.
Before even human beings wanted to get up and act, like puppetry has always been there.
Yeah.
So you've got these two mediums coming together, and that's what makes it so unique. That's why it stands out.
And I think that's why Netflix, I mean, there's that South Park joke where it's like, Netflix, you're greenlit, and thank God, because like, we're getting so much experimental stuff that wouldn't be made otherwise. And some of it's crap, but like we wouldn't have known that if you hadn't given it a chance. Yeah. Netflix gives things a chance, and I think without a platform like Netflix, we wouldn't have a resurgence of The Dark Crystal in the form of the prequel series.
Definitely not.
Because I don't think a cinema would let... I mean, we've just had Avengers Endgame, for fuck's sake. Like, they're not going to let The Dark Crystal back on the screen. Even places like the Prince Charles Cinema very rarely show things like The Dark Crystal. Like independent cinemas that like do reruns of old movies and stuff.
It's a risk.
It is, yeah.
Because if it flops, you've put all of that time, effort, money
and I
into
feel
it.
like it's never even on television either. Like it's... So it really shocked me when I found out that Netflix were doing this thing, because I was like... people remember this movie.
Yeah, because puppetry of any sort has been ironed out. Like, I even think about things like Bananas in Pyjamas. As a kid, I used to love it. And then when I watched the modern version, it used to be like men dressed up in suits, right?
Suits, like
and there was
Barney.
something just sort of raw and and now it's all animated.
Yeah.
So modern technology is kind of like...
And they did that with everything. They redid Andy Pandy, who was a puppet, and the Wooden Tops, and Bill and Ben, who were puppets. And there's a charm to them being puppets, and we're not allowed that charm anymore.
That's a good word.
Yeah, it is
Charm.
though. It's like it's so sweet and nuanced, and we are still getting Muppet movies, but they don't feel the same. Don't get me wrong, Muppets Most Wanted is a fantastic movie. I love it to pieces.
But they're different,
but it feels different.
They're stockier.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I don't know if that's the right
they
word.
are. They're more sort of sock puppet.
They're not trying.
They're simple.
They're not trying to be human.
No, they are the Muppets. They are their own sort of species in a way.
Yeah.
You don't get that sort of stringed puppet, Thunderbirdy sort of vibe anymore. At least I don't think you do. Like in anything. So again, I almost don't believe that Netflix have allowed this prequel to happen, because I'm like, really?
But that's why they are so brilliant. It's like you said, like they take a chance.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because this is a passion project.
Yeah, literally.
Right?
Literally.
I imagine everyone who's working on that, they've either grown up with it or like... They've got their heart in
They know what it is.
Yeah. And for puppeteers...
Oh, God, yeah.
What a platform.
Like, it could have been... I'm making shit up now, but like, can you imagine if like they were watching Dark Crystal when they were a kid, and now they've got the opportunity to bring it to Netflix, and they'd be like, this was one of my first inspirations, and now I get to like keep the legacy going and
that
stuff.
Feeling.
Yeah.
Oh, incredible.
I can't wait to finish the Netflix series. I'm very excited, because in theory it will take us right up to... Hopefully it will tell us how the crystal cracked, because it's another thing, and I'll edit this out. This is just purely me like bitching about the Netflix series a little bit, because it opened with like, yes, the Skeksis had been guarding the crystal since the dawn of time, blah blah blah, and I was like, that's wrong. Like, that's wrong.
Right.
Because the crystal cracked, and then from that came the two species. And the Skeksis looked after the crystal and the mystics lived elsewhere. Whereas this opens with the idea that like the crystal was always purple and cracked, and the Skeksis guard it. And I'm like, that's incorrect though. And if you're ramping up to like making it a reveal where we find out that actually that's not the thing, and that's just what, I don't know, the Gelflings believe, you've still opened your series with a fact that's going to be wrong. So that's going to be confusing to later audiences. I don't know though, I haven't seen it all the way through. I do need to beforehand. But it's that cop-out thing like they do in Frozen, where Hans is the surprise villain, but he does look when no one else is watching, after he's fallen in the boat, and he looks at Anna in that sort of like loving, endearing way to convince the audience that he's a good guy. But it's a cop-out. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's a really weirdly specific thing, but it pisses me off, because I'm like, it's cheating and it's lazy. Because you're lying to your audience.
Yeah.
And when Dark Crystal opened, I was like, you've already got the history wrong. So either you like didn't do your research, or you're like ramping up to something. But I already feel a bit cheated by being told an incorrect, like, sort. I don't know.
That'd be interesting, because like if someone's like a die-hard fan as well.
Yeah, and I was just
They
like,
feel the same.
And I went onto IMDb, and people were like, oh, a lot of people are giving this like 1 star because like they say that the opening was bad, and I'm like,
What,
because
of the original,
of the new one, because they are like, and then they clearly switched off and didn't watch the rest of it. I don't know, because I was like, that's wrong. That's like factually wrong. That's not the history of the Dark Crystal.
That's interesting.
But I wonder if they're doing a thing where it's like, that's what the Gelflings think, and then that's why the one in the library... I think
it might be the case.
Yeah. And then that's why the Gelfling that lives in the library is all like, oh, let me try and find the history of the Skeksis, and she's going to reveal it.
Is like, there's a reason why they are... They're being led by them. Yeah. There's a reason they believe in something
been, like,
that
duped.
turns out is not true.
Yeah.
I think that is the gist.
So
to all those people, jump back in, give it another shot. You might like
this is the thing. I'm a bit like, I can't really say until I finished the series.
Yeah.
But it did sort of like make me go, what? Why are you doing that?
A bit jarring.
Yeah. But already, like, they immediately went to that gelfling in the library with ink on her face, and I was like, she's my favourite character. And then they were like, she's a princess, and I was like, yep, she's my favourite. And I was like 13 all over again. Like, she is such my, like, type to be my favourite character in a thing. I'm like, the nerdy princess that gets ink on her face and trips up a lot. Hell yeah. Who's your favourite character?
Oh, this is
so many.
I really are. Chamberlain.
Yeah, there you go. Amazing.
I think he just stuck with me.
Yeah.
He's the image that I always had. Like, if I completely forgot about the film, I would have this character in my head, and I'd be like, where is he from?
Yeah.
He's just so unique, I
think.
He's
such a good character.
His voice, he do it so well. Yeah, brilliant.
I love it so much. Oh my god.
Because in some ways you sort of feel bad, like he gets stepped on as well. In a weird, twisted way, you feel bad for him.
Literally, that's why he's so human, because he goes through all these trials and he keeps coming back. But he's so evil and manipulative and scary. Like when they do that classic scene, which more movies need. There's one in the Never-Ending Story as well, when you turn up at that place and there's like prophecy exposition all over the walls.
Right.
I love it. It's one of my favourite tropes. And they're like, what? Oh, a gelfling's meant to like save the planet. Wow, what? And then they like turn around and he's like right there. Every time it gets me. Every time he's like, gelfling.
You do it too well.
Oh, it's a skill. I should have killed him for Halloween.
I thought maybe I should go as a gelfling. Yeah. And as I started Googling like costumes, like, no, this could go horrendously wrong.
This is the thing, I'm not good enough at paper mache.
Exactly, it would be time, lots of time.
Because you'd need it to be so specific so people got who you were. I mean, no one got who I was for Halloween this year anyway.
Who were you?
I was Drew Barrymore from Scream.
Oh, yeah. Is it Jen? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I had a slight crush on him as a kid.
Yeah, I'm
thinking back to it. I think I did.
I wouldn't be surprised, because he's the like hero, isn't he? And that his voice is so like sweet and calm, and like, I don't know, I just love doing it.
He's sort of vulnerable in in that weird,
sensitive, but like
the husband that we all need.
The boy of our dreams. Just be sensitive, find a crystal shard, save the planet, and you're ours. It's really easy. To feed the crystal they've used up all the gelflings, so now they have to use the podlings. And there's all these sucked up podlings walking around that are like even more walnutty and like pale as fuck.
Somehow like the mouths are sewn up.
Yeah, they're all like sort of really crim-crawled, and like they're just sort of really weakly walking around, because it's awful that like it's kind of a fate worse than death.
In a way,
just kill me, man.
Yeah.
But you've like sucked out all of my like life essence.
Yeah, you've destroyed my home.
Yeah.
My future.
Killed all my family.
Now
you've taken away like because I don't get it. They're still alive. But they're like
that's where it's interesting, because there's still something in them. So how much
still there.
essence do you need?
Is it like age? Like, do they now only have like 2 years to live?
Yeah.
Or is it just that they've still got another 45 years to live, but they're just going to do it in this hollow, weak way?
Yeah.
Which again is so horrific.
Yeah, could you ever recover from that?
And
like, do you
Kira
get your
has
essence?
it. Kira has her essence sort of sucked a bit, and I'm like, does that mean she's lost like 10 years of her life? Even though she does then die, but then she does come back to life.
But that's the thing, it's like, how long can you survive on it? Do you ever gain your essence back? Can you
reverse the thing?
Yeah.
Because she looks different. She looks more sort of haggard and worn when she's going into the climax after which is so great, because it doesn't do that thing where it's like, oh, and then she was like okay again. Like, they do genuinely torture her for a while and then kill her, and then bring her back to life. But like, they kind of had to.
It's a kids thing.
It's for kids.
I'm trying to find something really negative about
I know, same.
I guess it would just be the pace.
Yeah, it's just a bit slow, but because it's puppets and like it, like, and you see it in the new one, like slight uses of CGI allow for slightly more quicker
I really like that they've combined the two.
Because then it allows for, like, as I say, that flying scene where she's like swooping about underground. I was like, wee.
Yeah, because it's not too much CGI for it to be like, oh, this is now CGI.
Exactly.
It looks like, oh,
and
have
they're really
they?
just sort of using it to sort of establish different shots. So they'll do it to like have people transport from one to the other, and then once they zoom in on the scene again, we're like back to Puppet Land, which is like the perfect use and the perfect amount. So
there is one thing.
Oh.
In the new one, I get there was also female Skeksis, wasn't there?
Yeah.
There's like one or two females. Was it one
in
maid?
The original or the new one?
I think in both.
Yeah. So I was watching the new one, and there is like a female character Skeksis, and I was like, there's never been female Skeksis. So this time round, around the Emperor's bed, there's like one female Skeksis, and I only spotted her because she had the eyelashes that all us women have. I was like, there she is.
Because that's the question, right? How does it happen with their sex?
Yeah,
like
I was immediately,
like
the minute I saw
female.
her, I was like, because the Mystics don't have gender in the same way, I don't think. Or
No.
maybe they do. Again, I didn't look out for the eyelashes because that's the main indicator of gender.
Yeah, because they all look male.
Yeah, they
to
all
me.
sort of sound male with the sort of thing that they do.
Yeah.
Whereas there was like a one female Skeksis, but then would they lay eggs because they're like birds?
Yeah, because I think they
What
don't.
does a baby Skeksis look like? It probably looks horrible.
But the thing is, it's like how
and gross.
how of this like of the planet are they? Because if they're like from the spiritual, there's only a certain amount of them, isn't there?
Yeah, and so there's like the same amount of Skeksis as there are Mystics, and every time a Skeksis dies, a Mystic dies because they're like connected because they are the same person.
Yeah,
it's so clever when one of the Skeksis gets his like hand cut, we then cut to the Mystic and his hand has started bleeding. It's so good. It's so good.
When like the new one was being publicised on Twitter and stuff, she tagged me in it. I was like, no way, they're making a new one. And then you're like, Dark Crystal?
Yes!
Like, yeah. So now it's really been nice going back and revisiting it.
Yeah, so, and like finding someone that knows what the fuck it is.
Yeah.
Because as you say,
I felt like a
came out in
fool
what,
every
like,
time.
Yeah. And like some people have kind of heard of Labyrinth because of David Bowie, but like, and then I'm like, and then of course Dark Crystal as well, and they're like, what? And I'm like, you know, the one with the things. And like, because there's that Scissor Sisters song called Return to Oz, and they mention the Skeksis in there.
I do,
really
they?
great. Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna have to listen to that again.
It's really good.
Yeah.
It's a great little song. Again, because it just talks about 80s fantasy movies.
Yeah.
And I'm like, woo! I love 80s fantasy. Like, I fucking love it so much. And this is so up there in them. And I'm just so happy that I found someone that knows what it is. Not only knows what it is, but loves it as well.
No, it's been a lot of fun doing this.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Real joy. Do you have anything you want to plug? Where do we find you on social media?
Well, I am on Twitter at Liz_LouiseBell. I think I've got my Instagram link on there also, and my website. So
your website?
Yeah.
You being like legitimate.
Paying those dollars to get my face out there.
Literally. Oh man. You can find us on Instagram at Why This Film. We're on Twitter at Why This Film. We're on Facebook at Why This Film Podcast. And please email into us to correct all of our pronunciations of the characters' names today at whythisfilmpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time. Bye.
We watched
The film and we talked about it, but now it's time to say goodbye. We'll be back again with another movie that makes you wanna ask why.